Hey everyone, it's Stephanie and you are tuned into the review of Married at First Sight, Honeymoon Island, Season 1, Episode 7. So, it was a really interesting episode. You know, the topic of the episode was family, and family is major when you're talking about, marriage or really even any long-lasting relationship. So they bring some family to visit to the island and really get to know the different couples, and everybody's family came and kind of got to meet who they had paired themselves up with. So let's just kick it off. Shannon and Kimber. So Shannon and Kimber, I think this episode captured the really good dynamic of what they have going on. Shannon and Kimber are getting close. There's still some things that are some heavy foundational things that still don't add up for them. The distance is one, the not wanting to have children, and for some reason I get and this has kind of happened since they had that conversation with the experts, I get the idea that Kimber isn't completely sold on not having children, but she isn't sold on having them. So she's pretty adamant with, I don't really want them. And so we find that within the last couple of episodes, they kind of skate through that, and this episode, the no is now a maybe. And I think that for her over time, whatever her decision is will be a decision that she comes to in a natural way. If she does choose to have them and, makes a different decision, that'll be because she has naturally kind of processed whatever was in the way of having children, or she might stick to her original feelings and that may work out. We see them have that conversation, but let me take it back. So when she sees her parents, she gets emotional. She's super excited, and he gets very emotional seeing his mom and his sister. And, those are the most important women in his life at this time. So he's excited for them to meet Kimber. They really busted his chops about her. They have a dinner. They have a dinner with both, both her parents and his mom and his sister. And it's going pretty well, but the sister, Shannon's sister, is kind of, if we had to pick a stereotypical sister of who's like super tough on every girl, and her brother is like the light of her life and no woman can compare, it's pretty much Shannon's sister. And I think there's an appropriate way to be a concerned family member, or a family member who really wants the best for their, brother or sister or whomever, son, whatever. But, she took it a little too far, so I'm concerned. It just seemed a little obnoxious. We have to recognize that even though we care about our family member, we're not forever partners for a family member. So you cannot get in the way of them finding someone. You can always offer advice. You can always share a concern, but don't get so in the way that it makes it difficult for somebody new who's really kind of like a peacock at this point. Like, let me show you how beautiful I am, and, really wants to be accepted. It's really difficult when you're kind of being a jerk about it. So I really didn't like that interaction, and that kind of happened throughout the episode where we saw her being really tough on Kimber and being kind of judgy. We find that Kimber has, lived with 4 people before this. So that's a little concerning, and you can see that nobody wants to say it, but they're kind of judging, like, hey, you're not that old. You've had 4 people that you've lived with. Like, what is your deal? Are you a serial relationship person where you can't be alone? Do you take every relationship as seriously, meaning that you don't really know how to differentiate the good ones versus the ones that aren't that valuable? So there was a lot of that going on. They definitely pulled Shannon to the side later on and kind of said, do you think she's wifey material? Do you see her, with you in the future? What about the child thing? And although Shannon is well aware of that, he's kind of saying, give us a second. A lot of this stuff is preliminary. We're just trying to figure things out. We only have 3 weeks. Like, he brings it back to where this is an experiment. This is a process. We have 3 weeks. We will figure it out. Just let me be, because I'm in a good space. You can tell his mom and his sister obviously really care about him, and they're going to give their opinions, but they're also going to support him with where he is. Same thing with Kimber and her talking to her parents. She had a negative experience, I guess, or not so great experience initially. So she looks to her parents and they're supporting her, and her dad really wants to be a granddad and kind of explains the dynamic of becoming a parent and what that really is, and how you really don't know what that is until you do become a parent. And they have a good rapport and a good relationship, and it was kind of like a feel-good moment for her that she needed, kind of coming from his family where it was a little rocky. She ends up spending time with them again and asks, you know, do you think I would fit into the family? And she's saying, I hope I would fit into the family. And they support her in being okay with whether she chooses to have children or not. And that, I think, solidified a bond, or created a bond for her, because she's saying everyone kind of tries to make me feel bad for it, and so you're giving me room essentially to make the decision and not judge me for it. And I think she is comfortable with them in that space. So it ended up kind of working out. The dynamic, we'll see over time. If there are things that they can work out and get on the same page with, they do have the potential, I think, based on what we've seen. My only concern is some of the glaring stuff that obviously they're not on the same page about, but they seem to really like each other. It's going a little beyond just the physical for me now. Initially, that's kind of all that I saw. So that is Kimber and Shannon. I'm thinking that we'll see some really good stuff from them next episode. So moving on, Eric and Katie. So Eric and Katie, okay, so I really like them. I really like Katie. It's not that I don't like Eric, but I'm not getting anything from Eric that allows me to really get to know who he is. He is very guarded. We kind of get the same conversation about, I travel and I need someone who can kind of make that work. And he was saying to her parents, well, he was kind of nervous, so he talked a lot about work. And I think he's been doing that this whole series, where we don't really know much about Eric. We know that he travels. Like, what else do we know? We know that he has not had relationships work out because of the traveling. We know he does sales. Everything is very surface. And even the conversation he had with Katie about the traveling, he didn't really even go into depth about it. Katie, on the other hand, this episode, we see her really sweet dynamic with her parents. You can tell they're very close. It comes up that her ex relationship didn't work out because it didn't match in person versus out of person, which is why it's so important for her. If you remember her saying about them kind of making long distance work, is checking in and, you know, talking every day and kind of nurturing that relationship. We find out that her previous relationship, that wasn't happening. And so that's like a really sore spot for her. And her parents were able to help her identify that. Took her from a very secure place to a very insecure place. So we got to connect with Katie and see, oh, that makes sense, you know, and we're all watching, and a lot of us can connect with, oh, I get that. I've experienced that. Eric, I don't get anything from him, and I don't think he's really giving anything, and I don't see it working out for Eric and Katie. Not because they're not good people, but I'm not getting anything from Eric, so I don't really see what he would be giving in the relationship. You know, at least Katie's kind of opening up, being a little more or a little less guarded, and you're finding out her past, and we haven't found anything out with Eric, and the season finale is next week, and he's pretty much remained consistent. So I think that it's not so much the traveling. The traveling probably is a component, and yes, that is something that if you are with somebody who travels, you do have to navigate that. It's definitely doable, but you do have to learn how to navigate that and nourish the relationship in the way that you need, so that no person is feeling left out or not a priority. However, you also have to get something, and you also have to be able to give something. So as I was watching tonight, and I was like, you know, like, I don't get anything from him. I'm feeling like if he shows up that way in a very surface way, and if he shows up that way in his relationships, then that's a major portion of why they're not working out. And I think, and at this point I'm just making it up, but I'm thinking that his traveling may be a crutch and almost like a a comfy blanket, like a baby blanket. They love those things. Almost like a baby blanket that keeps him safe from really having to engage in a relationship. Where it's like, oh, I'm traveling, you know, the traveling. But really, is it? Because there's tons of people who travel who have great relationships. What is it about you that is not, you know, being able to get into a relationship and maintain that? It's not just the travel. And him not really showing up in this experiment, as far as I'm concerned, based on what we have seen or not seen, is like a problem. So that's my 2 cents with Katie and Eric. You can see that Katie's parents are not fond of him. They're so sweet in saying it though. You know, it's an interesting, he's interesting and it'll evolve, you know, and the dad's like not even say anything, you know, and I can tell, you don't like him. And it's not that they don't like him because of anything. They're just not feeling him. And energy is very real. If they would have met somebody else and the energy would have been on, then they would have, you know, connected with that. But he's not really offering anything. He's talking about exotic fruits. Who cares? He's not, you know, they did not come here to meet you for you to talk about exotic fruits, you know. So that's kind of annoying. And I totally get why they're sweet. They're like polite, but they're not really feeling him. And I'm not either anymore. So that's Katie and Eric. I mean, I want the best for the two of them. And I also really want them to, especially Katie, since this is who I'm getting to know on the show, I want her to end up with someone who can kind of give her what she needs. And she, to me, requires someone who is a lot more nurturing. And I'm not seeing that from Eric. So I don't really know. So that's Katie and Eric. Jada and Chris. So Jada and Chris's family was not able to make it. Chris's family, no one has passports, so a lot of times this is very last minute. Can you come? We'll fly you out, or whatever the case may be. Unfortunately, they weren't able to make it. So that was in the back of my mind. I was like, always have a passport. I mean, I have a passport, but if you don't have a passport, you never know. You assume, well, I don't plan on taking a trip, but you really never know what may come up, so get your passport. But none of his family could come. Of course, his daughter couldn't come. And Jada's family, I don't know why they couldn't come. I don't remember hearing a reason, but they didn't come either. So they got to FaceTime their family. Jada FaceTimed her parents and introduced Chris to them, and Chris did this, like, Amazing Grace duet with his dad. It was cute. He got the words wrong, but it was cute, you know. It was just fun to watch because it's like, okay, you know, we're pseudo meeting and you guys do a duet. I mean, you know, from the perspective of the person looking at that happening, it's cute because you want all good vibes. So that was good to see. And then on the flip side, we see Chris talking to his daughter, who's so cute, 2 years old, and he introduces Jada to her, and she, you know, talks to her as much as she can, and it's just a very sweet moment. And Chris says, you're the first person that I have introduced her to, and you can tell that his daughter is extremely important to him, and he really doesn't take it lightly. And he was very comfortable in motioning Jada over and saying, you know, say hi. And so that was an important moment. Other than that, we didn't get too much from them, but they both have similar values in terms of like family being really important and faith and all of those things. So I think they're still in sync. They still seem to have a good vibe going on. So we'll see how that works out. And then last but not least, we have Brandon and Jonna. So Brandon and Jonna, to me, they have a really good friend chemistry. And this is something that I'm just picking up. You know, this episode, for some reason, I'm not picking up on their couples chemistry. You know, she's attractive, he's attractive, so you put them together, they have a good time. You know, they have been somewhat physical, you know, they're very touchy, and they've kissed, so you want them together, but I'm not really seeing that. I'm getting a lot of angst from Jonna to really want Brandon, but for some reason, I don't think that Brandon is really ready for what he's ready for. And I think that type of pressure in a very short time, which really is just beyond this experiment, will kind of cause things to collapse. Like, I wouldn't want that to happen because I'd really like visually seeing them together. And I think they have like a really good rapport, not that they're comfortable and they're getting to know each other, but there's still like a missing component. And I'm getting this like yearning and this yanking from Jonna to go to this next level. And he talks to Pastor Cal about being ready for the next level, and he calls her mom, and that's where the episode ends. He calls her mom to ask for her hand, and I'm thinking, why is this happening? Realistically, it's not a good idea. Realistically, we know Brandon's not ready for that, and it's really only been 3 weeks, so can we expect her to be ready? And she's still moving at her pace, which is significantly slower than his. And I just think, are you even really in tune to looking at the signs of where this relationship is? Let's say it has the longevity factor. It's not there yet. So by moving too quickly right now, you may sabotage something that may work out in the future, if it does, if it develops into that. So yes, I think they're cute. I like seeing them together, but I'm just not getting the increased romantic experience that I think we all want to see from them, because we think that they have a really good vibe. So that's Brandon and Jonna. We'll see. I think the next week is the season finale, so we will see how that goes and who ends up with who and who gets engaged. I think that's the goal, to get engaged, and we'll go from there. So hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like, and I will see you next week. Everyone have a great week.